Hello, I'm Ryan Cook, and this is Civic Tech Chat, a podcast about the civic technology movement. We seek to harness the power technology has to improve the delivery of public services to people everywhere. Thank you both for joining us on Civic Tech Chat this time. Could you each introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yes, hello, I'm Nao. I'm a global relationship lead of Code for Japan. I'm currently based in Kyoto, Japan, and I'm working with the local civic tech community in Japan, and also working with the international civic tech communities outside of Japan to expand our network. And me personally, I'm not the engineer, but I really like to work with engineers and then, and expand the idea of the civic tech. So that's me.
Hi, I'm Lena Patel. I'm part of the Code for Australia community. I was previously part of the team, the core team or the base team that was running the organisation in Australia for a couple of years, and have since moved out of that and am part of the broader civic tech community here in Australia. Similar to now, I'm not a developer. I sit more on the design side of things. And so my work these days is as a professional facilitator and also as a collaboration designer, which is about how a group of people can work better together. So those are the sorts of things that I was doing whilst part of the Code for Australia team. And similar to now, remain connected to the global civic tech community through Code for All. And I'm based in Melbourne, Australia.
For each of you, what would you say is your personal why? You know, that thing that deep down that drives you to get out of bed each morning and do what you do.
So for my personal why, that drives me to get out of bed every morning would be currently, like, we are facing coronavirus in Japan. It's a big thing in Japan currently, but we also have many natural disasters. Like every month, like we have earthquake or like heavy rains, and then because of the global warming and then also the global this kind of changing the daily life in Japan, it's a little bit changing significantly. So I really want to fix this with my personal contribution to the society. So that's brought me to join Code for Japan because I realized technology is something which we haven't make use of it so much in the Japanese society. So I believe, technology could maximize the impact of each person's project.
That's excellent now, and it's so useful to be reminded of people's physical reality. Australia is not beset by as many natural disasters as Japan generally is. However, we're all being affected by climate change in pretty major ways now. My personal why, I describe my mission as being to alleviate needless workplace suffering and to bring more kindness into the world, one team at a time. So that mission kind of places me and my work within workplaces, and where the site or the location of my work is in teams. So whether that's a small team in an operational type area or a leadership team that's leading an organization. My theory or my hypothesis is that team is the smallest unit at which we can practice being human with each other. And for those of us who who are fortunate enough to have work in our lives, we spend a lot more time there than possibly in many other social groups or groups of people that we're part of. So I figure if I can put some effort into how to make that moment in people's lives more human, I imagine that kind of ripples out into the rest of their lives. So that's why I get out of bed every morning.
Are there any pieces of media, whether it's a podcast, something that's in print, video, or something else entirely that y'all would recommend for our listeners to check out?
Well, I would recommend Japanese media. It's called Note.com. Sometimes people outside of Japan says that it is hard to access to the information in Japan because of the language barrier. Since all the article or all the news in Japan is written in Japanese, so it is not really accessible. But you always have Google Translate, so you can translate Japanese article into your languages. And then, in this platform, which is a platform anybody can upload their blog post, and many Japanese civic takers, including engineers and then also project managers, posting about their activities. So I think if you're interested in Japanese civic tech scene, that's the platform you can refer to.
I would recommend Dense Discovery, which is a newsletter. It's published currently out of Melbourne, and the human behind that, Kai, is also the publisher of a magazine called Offscreen Magazine, which is a print-only tech magazine, which is just such a treat. So Dense Discovery as a weekly newsletter is just a very deeply thought take on tech. And what I really like about that newsletter is it sort of gets you to question perhaps the more kind of ethical aspects of whatever it is that you're undertaking. And I enjoy it because it's quite an opinionated newsletter, and I enjoy people having a position on, for those of us working in tech and design, I enjoy when people have a position or have an opinion. The other one I would point people's attention to is Future Crunch, which I believe also comes out of Australia. Future Crunch is it's in the name, it's future oriented. What I really like about what Future Crunch are doing is, again, it's a very conscious, thoughtful approach to thinking about the future. And it is actually, for the most part, very hopeful. So you just have to it doesn't take much to step online or out your front door, and there's waves of negativity in our current reporting and our current use of social media. So to have these people writing in a hopeful tone about the possibility of technology is a really great thing. So it's a good thing to have in your information diet.
I suppose now we can go ahead and shift to our main topic for today, and that is the initiative that both of you are rather familiar with, called Tech for Non-Tech with Code for All. Like with our personal introductions, I think it would be good for us to start with the concept of why. So what do y'all think is the why for this program, and how would you describe then what it is at a high level for folks?
Tech for Non-Tech is a day-long training program that different organizations can run. And when participants come, it's essentially around bridging the gap between technical and non-technical people in terms of web development. So at the moment, the content of it is around how the internet is made, essentially would be the summary. So what are the basic building blocks of the internet as we know it? And then how do people build on that? And then how to work well with developers. Now, in terms of the why, an interesting thing we've discovered about Tech for Non-Tech is that it's a bit like, I don't know, I feel like there's a useful analogy here, but it's a bit like it's like a bit of a tin of paint, right? And you can use that paint on all sorts of things for all sorts of reasons. It's a very multi-purpose a training day. So the why actually reflects a need in the location where it's being run. So when it started off, it was dreamt up by some folk at Inspiral Dev Academy in New Zealand. And the problem they were trying to solve was they were graduating people from their boot camp, so from the Dev Academy boot camp. And an interesting thing about their boot camp was that they were specifically skilling would-be developers with what I would call emotional intelligence, and a sense of like your work is essentially with humans, and you need to know how to be human with the other humans in order to be a really good developer. So the problem that they were trying to solve is that they were graduating these kind of emotionally aware developers, but they were landing in workplaces that were not developer ready. So then Tech for Non-Tech was to make workplaces developer ready. And that was in service of their bootcamp graduates. When I brought it across to Australia in collaboration with Dev Academy, the why for me was that we were running fellowship programs, and you can go to the Code for Australia website to find out what a fellowship program was. And we were encountering the same thing. So we were bringing in employing these really talented web developers and sort of developers and designers who had zero experience in government. And that was one of the kind of requirements, was that you hadn't had experience with the bureaucracy to come and work in a bureaucracy and bring that wonderful magic and fresh pair of eyes. And again, we were finding, of course, the government departments that Code for Australia partnered with, they had never worked with developers before. And that was kind of part of the magic, that the people had never worked in government and the government had never worked with this new way of thinking. Well, new for them, not new in the world. So my motivation with Tech for Non-Tech was to create a slightly softer landing for these incredible humans we had recruited to come and join us on this fun adventure. And I do believe it made a difference for folk who arrived and where their colleagues in government had participated in Tech for Non-Tech. It made for a slightly softer landing and a bit more understanding on a day-to-day basis. So that was our motivation. I think it's a different thing now when you hand it across to, so our colleagues in South Africa, Open Up South Africa, they had a completely different motivation, which, and I know I'm speaking for them, but as I understood it, was around putting within reach of civic organizations, civil society organizations, putting within their reach the possibility of using web technology to further their aims. So it was very much around like educating, empowering civil society and activists, which is a completely different scene to the one that Code for Australia works in. So again, serves the same purpose, and sort of there's a bridging thing, but it's bridging for a completely different reason.
The situation in Japan in the civic tech scene is a little bit different. We also work with the ministries, and then we want to empower public officers. But also we have more local civic tech communities. There are more than 80 communities in Japan, and then all of them have each of them have a different purpose, but they are trying to introduce technology to their community. And then we already have tons of like lectures to introduce data analysis or web development or other technological skills, but we really didn't have a lecture to introduce who is engineers are, how its engineers look like. I mean, like how to work with them, like in a good relationship. And then I think we will explain more about the activities in Tech for Non-Tech. But in Tech for Non-Tech, there are many unique activities which can accelerate communication between the engineers and non-tech people. So so we were looking for these kind of activities which we can introduce to the community to help them to introduce the power of the technology. So that is one of the purpose for Code for Japan.
Next, I would be curious to get into some of like your y'all's both of your personal experience kind of with the program, as I imagine y'all have maybe either the same or maybe differing experiences around like facilitating something like this. What has that been like for y'all, and are there any like preferred practices that you've picked up along the way as you've learned?
After the exchange program, handover program, we organized 3 tech for non-tech in Japan. And then what we have found was academic institutions in Japan are getting interested in our project, which we didn't expect, but they are looking for some sort of educational training program that the engineer students can learn how to work with non-tech people. And actually, Tech for Tech is really working well for those people. And yeah, so lessons I learned. People are very interested in technology, but they really don't know how to start with. And even they are not in the tech industry, many project leaders are required to think about how to deal with those new technology like AI or blockchain or many other special technologies. And then they are just leaving it to vendors or like engineers, but they also know it's not solving the problem. They also need to learn how it works. So what we have found is, yeah, many people are looking for a place to learn technology, and Tech for Non-Tech seems it's really catching attention from those people.
What's interesting for me, being now kind of on the other side of an exchange, where for the first year or two, I was the person to whom the thing was being handed over to. And so it's interesting being now one of the people who has handed it on to others. One thing that could be useful to know that sort of explains the shape of Tech for Non-Tech is that both the folk in Spiral Dev Academy, so Ants Cabral and Kate Beecroft and the others whose names I forget who are involved with it, and then myself, we are all facilitators in terms of our work. What that means is that we are paying a lot of attention, and possibly a little bit more attention, which is what keeps us in a job, to what the experience of a gathering is like. So what does it mean to host people? What does it mean to create a safe learning space so that grown-ups feel comfortable saying they don't know? What does it mean to make it okay to not know? When you're thinking about something like how the internet works, right? It's been around for a while, and as a professional who may have scaled the ladders of whatever organization, you may have a level of seniority in your organization, and to realize that you don't actually know how this this ubiquitous thing works, and this everyday thing that you interact with, there can be a lot of mixed feelings about that, and so that's the kind of jumble of feelings that are present in each person when they walk into the room, because in a way they're signaling, I have no idea what this thing is, and I actually don't know how it works. And by the way, I've been commissioning tech projects for ages, and we've spent tons of money on stuff, and to say that you don't know is actually quite a big thing to ask of people. So as facilitators, we're totally primed for creating a learning environment where there's playfulness, and there's an openness, and there's a curiosity to kind of say, well, it's a shame nobody sat you down and taught you how the internet works, because I don't think such a thing exists, right? No, there's no such class. I don't know how you would have worked it out by yourself. So it's okay. This is just a really rapid class. This is like a very quick class on history of the internet, how it came to be, the very basic building blocks. And then from there, we've essentially provided them a scaffold or a mental model that they can then hang new information on. So one of the highest value things that I think people leave with is a scaffold, that any new information that they read, they can kind of place it on a sort of a frame that we've hopefully shared with them. So the playfulness is really around moving people into a space of learning and moving people into a place of curiosity so that they leave empowered to continue their learning and find their own answers in the future.
It seems that one of the ways the class tries to connect these ideas, and Lena, I think you were alluding to this a little bit, is through the use of analogs. Whether it's the use of post notes on a board, or in one case that I read about, the assembling of a Lego model. What sort of things do folks tend to learn from those sorts of activities?
The thing that most helps is anything that bridges a person's current understanding to the new concept that you are sharing with them. So the heart of what Tech for Non-Tech is helping people to come up with language or ways of describing a technical phenomena or a technical thing in language that they, in everyday language that they understand. So in Western culture, where English is a dominant language, analogies are a method of doing that. So when you get somebody to create an analogy about a technical concept, that is one way to bridge. The other way, and also just because I use Lego in my work as part of my work, getting people to build a model of something. So that's a kind of a form of an analogy, but you kind of just get them to like materialize the thing. My chosen thing is Lego, and so that's what I handed over to other people, but other people may choose to use any materials that's, part of what they like to work with. And so again, you're inviting people to come at new knowledge by building their own bridge to it. So we don't stand up there and, there are some definitions that are given there, some explanation of stuff, but we really ask people to own and take responsibility for their learning, and to, okay, so what do you think this thing means? Or how would you describe this thing? And then we use that as a learning opportunity that, we would say, okay, the way we would tweak that is this way, or the way we would tweak that particular comparison is this way. You don't know what people think until you ask them, right? And until they express it. So we get them to express it when you're talking about dominant English language places through analogy or through model making. Lego being a very handy thing to make models. I think it's different in Japan.
Well, we really love the Lego work in Japan. We are using it every time, and then after the Lego activity, we always get a really beautiful Lego artwork. But we realize the outcome itself is not only the important thing. The process is more important. That's what we have learned. As you mentioned, Nina, so without the expressions, people cannot ask questions. So after the Lego activity, people try to explain technical concept or words with Lego, and then they have realized they will find what part of the concept they are interested in or they want to understand. So people can come together and then discuss about the point, and then so they can understand the part deeper. So I think this is really important process for the kind of for the projects, because people can stand on the same point and then they can be on the same page. So this kind of modeling is really important. But at the same time, folks also realize they cannot explain completely with the analogy. It's just a first step to understand and also learn a perspective of other teammates.
There was a Medium post that I saw about Tech for Non-Tech, and in it, it's mentioned that one of the 5 reasons that the program is important is that it's, and to quote, a great model to exchange knowledge, which is developed in local communities. This seems to fit well with the kind of common ideal across a lot of civic tech initiatives where they talk about like building as a partnership, learning from local expertise. Can we talk a bit about what that looks like for this sort of program and each of your perspectives?
When we organize Tech for Non-Tech in Japan, the interest of the audience is different from it's different. So we also needed to create a new content and material for a Japanese audience. And then one of the things was data analysis and also data visualization. Audience in Japan are really interested in the data. So we have created a new content that was something we have tried to fit to the Japanese situation. And also, the analogy, the concept of analogy is also kind of difficult to introduce to a Japanese people, but we already have a really traditional, how can I say, joking style. It's called ogiri. It's really similar to Western analogy way of thinking. So we adapt this way of we adapt this style of the joking, and so people can easy to explain, describe the technological concepts with their words. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
The kind of biggest learning I had from participating in the exchange was that I took it on from people who were, the people kind of who created it, who come from a very strong facilitation basis in their work, and they happen to work in and around tech. Similar situation that I'm in. And also New Zealand and Australia culturally are not massively different, right? So we could just lift and drop the thing very easily. And so you can imagine that another person who had a strong facilitation background and whose work practice really involved attending to what the experience is like for the humans, and who sits in and around tech could easily, and is in a Western context where in the dominant English language, Tech for Non-Tech would just be a lift and drop. However, when you take it to somewhere like South Africa and take it to somewhere like Japan, South Africa and Australia are all culturally quite different. So whilst we all work in and around tech and we're all part of the civic tech community, the cultures in which we come from and which we are offering this course, will necessarily have to adapt. So it was fascinating to me that analogies, I would never have known that this concept of an analogy isn't immediately translatable into Japanese culture. But the idea was that, well, what it aims to do, so in our case, it's a bridging mechanism. So we found, we added onto it Lego. Lego was something I added into Tech for Non-Tech. And it's hilarious to see that that's kind of carried on. So that's wonderful. But then analogy has adapted into ogiri instead. And in South Africa, I'm sure there's an adaptation that has occurred that makes it suitable for that location and for that culture and their culture of learning. And in one interesting thing is that in Australia, we can be very self-deprecating, so we can kind of be putting ourselves down a little bit when we're we could be the experts in the room, but we will quite often be sort of self-deprecating in that. And that's a characteristic our colleague Ben and myself share a little bit. Whereas I remember we were chatting with Now, and he was saying, you can't, you have to be the expert, otherwise people won't listen to you. So when you're at the front of the room, you have to really kind of stand in your expertise, otherwise you won't get people's respect. And we're like, no, nobody will listen to us if we're like that in Australia. So there's sort of cultural differences around how somebody at the front of a room is regarded and what it means to reveal to your colleagues that you don't know something. And all those little moments around the experience means that the experience of Tech for Non-Tech just shifts to accommodate for that cultural difference.
if I add to the Lina's point, yes, I was assuming the speaker in the room needs to be like really professional and then expert in the domain. But after the handover program, I have realized it's okay to be, to be myself. And with my personality, I realized people are more tend to listen to me. So instead of domain expert like engineers or like professional facilitators facilitate the activities, me facilitate the room, it seems more comfortable for the participants. With my experience, I don't have a technical background, but I had the experience that working with the engineers or other domain experts, and then I had so many failures and then many mistakes in the project. And then when I share my experience, people feel more safe to be not knowing everything. And so yeah, I try to be myself as a facilitator in the workshop. So I realize participants can feel more confident or comfortable.
So as we know, ultimately, your organizations were able to procure a grant to like help support this program. And I believe we've mentioned a bit how like some level of this is kind of this idea of like a business model that is being shared. And what I wonder is, what sort of impact does access to resourcing like that have to how you think about a program like this and how it ultimately ends up being run?
This is absolutely a business model question. And I love that you're asking this. And I'm going to zoom us out a little bit out of civic tech. Another really, really big part about Tech for Non-Tech, which really held my fascination and was the possibility that we could have a business, like what does it mean to have a scalable business model that can be localized? And what does it mean to offer an income stream to your colleagues around the world, but an income stream that once you hand it over, there is absolutely nothing you can do for that opportunity to bring money in. It now sits entirely in somebody else's hands and what they make of it. Part of the handover was consideration about what is the receiving organization's capacity to do something with this, right? We're going to invest. We did about there was 6 90-minute weekly calls before the handover. Then 3 of us flew halfway around the world and we're in a location for a week where we delivered the course 3 times. 3 times? Yeah, where there was like, we the ones who knew how to do it delivered it and we were observed, and then the people observing then took it on and delivered it, and then there was like, so it was quite a busy week, and then come back and then do some follow-up calls. That's actually quite an investment of time on a whole heap of people's efforts and life. And so you'd want to know before going into that whoever's picking it up can actually do something with it. And so I think it's, part of that question is funding, and part of that is the organizational's capacity. So if you think of funding as a proxy for having the headspace to do something, then yeah, sure, funding does matter. I mean, Code for Australia was able to do it because we were a viable business, and we did track how much time we were spending on it, and we priced it so that so that our costs were covered and that we made a margin. And we also had an agreement that a certain percentage of everyone's ticket sales goes into a central pool. That particular ideal, I'm not so sure how that's played out now that it's with lots of other organizations, but certainly between us and Dev Academy, we had a central pool. So we were giving a portion of the ticket sales back to Dev Academy to cover new content being developed. So the idea was that the thing would be self-funding in a way. So everybody puts a chip of their ticket sales into a central pool, and then that central pool pays for new content and maintaining making slide decks look better and things like that. So if Code for Australia hadn't been financially viable, if we were like busy scrambling for grants and busy running things so that we get more grants and money and keeping our funders happy, we just would not have had the headspace to bring the creativity that's needed to launch a whole new service offering or a whole new thing. Likewise, I guess, a useful observation that there was a set of things true for Code for Japan and a set of things true for for Open Up South Africa. And the reality of both of these organizations means that the Tech for Non-Tech has taken, has not been as fast in one and has blossomed in the other. So maybe that's a funding question, but I think it's like more broader, like capacity. Like now, I believe, has a very demanding full-time job. he's not just doing Code for Japan stuff. So in a way, now and myself, we both had jobs, and that meant that we're able to be a bit more creative about the stuff we do outside of that.
So eventually, of course, your two organizations that ended up and South Africa's organization ended up all kind of doing an actual exchange. I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about that act in and of itself. So can we dig into what's all involved in trying to do the actual exchange and that transfer of knowledge, that sort of activity?
Making the exchange happen, first of all, needed the support of the leadership of each of those organizations, because it would mean a significant investment of time on their people's part. So yeah, just a shout out to the people at Open Up South Africa and Code for Japan and Code for Australia for enabling the people to participate in the exchange. What else was needed, and this was, I guess, a really big part of the ethos of the Tech for Non-Tech extending the global network, which was something that and Spiral Dev Academy and I had chatted about, was first and foremost, it's about a values alignment. So because, as I mentioned before, because Tech for Non-Tech can actually be, it's a very general purpose training program. And because it can be offered in all sorts of different contexts, what we were interested in is handing it over to people who we felt would do good with it, which is a very arbitrary thing as to, whose version of good. And so in order to kind of say, yes, I hand this over to you and I feel you'll do good with it, that's entirely around values alignment. So being part of the Code for All network, there's a bunch of stuff that's already been worked out, right? Those organizations wouldn't be in the Code for All network had a bunch of other things not happen. So that kind of values aspect of it fit really well. So that's kind of the sort of the background work. And it's almost like the background work was the bigger work that needed to happen. Once you agree that, it's then just like scheduling calls, sitting on Zoom for hours and hours and hours, booking flights, being in a place. And there was a whole kind of process we plotted out together as to asking our partner organizations, what do you need? What would help you feel okay to take this back to your context? Going to South Africa, it was really great. Our colleague Ben and myself were all in one house in Cape Town, very walking distance to where Coda Bridge, I think, the space that Open Up operate out of, which is a fantastic space, literally under a bridge. Really, really cool workspace. And then they hosted us for the week. And the first day, on a 5-day schedule, we kind of arrived and, hook into the Wi-Fi and eat their snacks and get to see what they're working on. And then the second day, we delivered the content. So Ben and I from Code for Australia delivered the content to a group that they had already previously organized. What we didn't realize is that it was a group in a regional area. So we were all in a van from 5 a.m. till 10 p.m., driving out, running a full day and then driving back. So, being in a van is a great knowledge transfer space. as is being being in a house was its own thing. We had some really fantastic chats, before and after, and just like hanging out. Being in a van is a whole other thing, because then there's like all of us in there, and there was something really excellent about that we learnt about each other and about each other's culture, and whilst driving through this incredible landscape. Came back, did a retro, regathered, blah, blah, blah. And then it switched over to Code for Japan and Open Up South Africa to then run a thing to a group that, again, Open Up had assembled or invited. And then the Friday was kind of part retro, part celebration, part just all hang out. So there was some really wonderful moments of friendship. And I feel like that was just like the spirit of Civic Tech, like coming to life, like the way we hung out, being from completely different cultures, completely different countries, completely different work backgrounds, that we could kind of come together, share this thing, create something, and then take it back. And we remain, even though I haven't seen now on a Zoom call for a year, we're on Slack together and we've both blogged about this as well. We now remain in relation to each other. So it's not a transactional relationship where he paid for something and then I gave him something and then that's it, we say bye. It's like, it's a very relational, the process was very much around building relationships, and the lines are always open. So in 5 years' time, when they're running Tech for Non-Tech in whatever form and I have a question about something, that those lines will just always be open.
So before this handover program or exchange program, only way we can expand our network is just attending an international Civic Tech conference or just, visit someone in the other country. That was the only way we were able to talk about Civic Tech in other countries. But through this process, as Lina mentioned, like we were able to build a friendship. I think that was great. And then I think this handover process was very important. Through the process, we were able to communicate and discuss and then exchange the knowledge. I think that was a very good opportunity, or it was a good way to start a conversation and then start asking like what is the situation in your country, and then share like what is the situation in Japan. So I believe that was a very great opportunity. So we are able to be a friend.
As our conversation draws to its conclusion here, one of the things that we like to do on Civic Tech Chat is to give some space at the end here for the guest, or in this case, guests, the two of you, to monologue a bit and kind of give us an idea of what you'd like us, the listeners, to be thinking about as we leave the talk. So for each of you, what would those concluding thoughts be?
Tech for Non-Tech program for Code for Japan was very great opportunity. Thanks to the Code for this exchange program, we were able to meet a new community contributor, Hiromi. She has been taking care of localize the content for a Japanese audience, and then also managing the whole project in Japan. But without this new project, we were not able to meet this new contributor. And then even for myself, with the Tech for Non-Tech project, I am able to working more closely with the Code for Japan. So I'm really appreciate this opportunity. And also, as we have just mentioned, we were able to meet you guys. That's also really great opportunity for us.
I really liked what you said before now around friendship. And sometimes for those of us working in tech, I'll speak for myself that being able to name these kind of more human aspects of being a human does not come easily. So I really appreciate you. I think I wanted to say friendship, and then I was like, oh, I might be overstating the relationship if I say that. But yeah, just
I think at we're at this like incredible moment in time, right? Those of us working in tech and design, holy moly, like what a time to be alive and to be in this field, and all the like collection of privileges that have arrived us here, and of course your individual effort, but there's this interesting reality we exist in, where the consequences of some of the tech that a bunch of us have been involved in building has had a result of atomizing and disintegrating collectives, right? So I'm sort of probably stating the obvious here around the ways in which human community and relations have become atomized, and how our concerns have become kind of very personalized rather than generally community minded. And the ways in which there's so many ways in which interactions have been reduced to transactions. And so this is sort of just this like irony of this wonderful place we are in as technologists, including design, and the undeniable effect that deploying our talents has on humanity. And so I think it's in that context that tech for non-tech sort of popped up as one of many possibilities. It's not the only thing doing this, but it's sort of one of many possibilities, which is about bringing people into relation with each other. So the handover, as we've both spoken about, was a very relational experience. So like going over was very relational, even the way it was set up, and the fact that this happened in the Code for All network. Again, that's a highly relational space. Something about that kind of gives me hope. So something about the possibility that within open source communities, we can come into relation through the technology we're making or through the things we're creating is a really energizing and a thing that fills me with hope. And, the irony with tech for non-tech is that it by its nature cannot go viral. Like it can only move at human pace, and humans don't move at virality or is not a feature of humanity. Like you can't scale tech for non-tech. So there's something stubbornly slow about it that I really like. Yeah, it's just never going to scale on the shape of those things that scale, because humans just like physically cannot move that fast, and we cannot learn that fast. So having this thing that is just stubbornly slow and slows things down, and it takes a day, because that's how long it takes for a person to get from A to B on a concept they've not encountered before. Those would be my closing thoughts.
Lena, now I want to thank you both for taking the time out of your day to come on Civic Tech Chat. I very much enjoyed this conversation, and I have no doubt that the listeners out there will take tremendous value out of what we've heard today.
Thanks for having us on, Ryan. Really appreciate the opportunity to reflect. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You can follow us on Twitter using the handle @CivicTechChat. Visit us on the web at civictech.chat, or subscribe to us for content updates wherever it is you download your podcasts.